Welcome to Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast. Learn firsthand from business owners who built successful ABA businesses. Utilize proven techniques and strategies to help your practice thrive. This is Building Better Businesses, an ABA podcast with Jonathan Mueller.
Emily Bruce is a licensed behavior analyst and the owner of Acorn Behavior Consultation and Therapy Services. She's also the founder and CEO of PeerKnect, the smartphone application and web-based platform for children and families with special needs. Emily, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Hey, I'm excited too. And I'm going to start with hey, I love Pixar and cartoon and other movies. And Sonic 2 recently came out. My kids love the first. They're going to be seeing the second. And I know you have a heartwarming story about how the Sonic movie franchise related to one of your clients. Can you share that story, Emily?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got a phone call last week from one of my former clients, but I'm going to rewind back to how this is kind of related to PeerKnect. So as a therapist, I always tried to do community outings, school, push and support in the home, and then when I worked in a clinic, of course, in the clinical environment. But as an ABA therapist, we're supposed to help our clients generalize their skills in all the different environments. So I always wanted to make community outings part of the treatment plan. And one of the kiddos that I worked with, we really had to work on some social skills, decreasing eloping, all kinds of things that you can only do when you're out in the community. So we would go to the library once a week. And while we were there, my client's mom and another mom started talking. This other mom had a son who was the same age as my client. And they just kind of were like, hey, why don't we try to get them together, try to get them to socialize, all that wonderful stuff. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. So we started out with my client. He wouldn't engage with the other kiddo. I had them looking at books together, like you take turns turning the page, all of these things. And so we would meet every Wednesday. And we, every time we would get together, behaviors would improve. I would see more engagement from my client. Like they would share puzzles. My client would start playing with the other client. He would share his toys, which was really awesome and amazing. And so probably 8 weeks into us doing this, one day we show up at the library and our friend wasn't there. And my client looked around and he saw some other kids in the library and he walked up to them independently and he said, hi, what's your name? And I was like, this is the greatest day of my life. This is amazing. Yes. Yeah. So I was like, this is because we actually had a peer to engage with and work on our skills with. And it was totally organic and natural. Like I would contrive some things like, hey, why don't you guys share this? Why don't you try sharing your toys, whatever it was. So fast forward a few years to about 2 weeks ago. And I no longer see clients because I'm 100% focused on growing PeerKnect. But my clients still keep in touch with me. Sometimes moms will reach out to me just because you spend so much time with a client and they're like family. You're like family, and so this kiddo calls me and he's 8 now. And he was just asking how I was doing. This is somebody who had a lot of language delays, intraverbal delays, and I was asking him questions about school. Has he have a best friend? All of these wonderful things. He was telling me about the Sonic movie coming up. He was like, I know it's part 2 coming up, but I would really love to see part 3. And I mean, he was just so engaged in this conversation. And I was like, man, he made so many gains in such a short period of time. And I can have this full-fledged conversation with him and he can tell me exactly what he likes. And he loved Sonic when I was working with him and he loves Sonic now. But just for him to tell me about the movie, when it's coming, he even knew when it was coming out. He wanted me to come see it with him, everything. It was just amazing.
That's the power of our science and treatment and the power of the authentic relationships.
Yes.
That you built with him. Well, I noticed, Emily, you were on Dr. Phil, some time ago, which is pretty extraordinary. So I'm like, oh, but what was really neat about at least what I saw of your Dr. Phil videos, you asked him a question. You described, your work with children with special needs, children with autism, but also why is this so ignored in our society, right? Why is it a problem? Like, people won't talk about special needs and developmental disabilities. And Dr. Phil, he, by the way, had a great response, but I want to turn it back to you. How would you answer your own question?
So just so you know, I wasn't on the Dr. Phil show. I had an opportunity to interview him. I was one of like 17 or 18 people. And so I was on a stage in front of like 3,500 people, and I was chosen, and it was super exciting. And it was a great time. But yeah, so I got to ask him the question, and I thought that his answer was pretty spot on. People really don't know what to do. They don't know how to help. They don't know how to be supportive. And I think that's where, like, what we're trying to do is really promote inclusion. We're trying to educate the community, not just other parents of children who are typically developing, but also businesses. How can businesses be more supportive? How can they be more inclusive? Letting people know, like, hey, just have a conversation. If you used to be friends with this person, and then they had a child with special needs, and their child might engage in interfering behaviors, and you don't know how to be around that friend, just ask them, like, how can I support you? What do you need from me? Do you just want me to come over every once in a while? We can sit at your kitchen table and have a cup of coffee and just talk like we used to. I've had parents tell me that their friend group has fallen off. They lose friends because their child has a diagnosis. And I think really, if people would just ask that question, like, what do you need from me? How can I support you? How can I help you? I think that's really going to help solve a lot of these, this ignoring, or let's push this aside. With autism rates increasing the way that they are, 176% increase in the last 20 years, that's huge. I think people need to educate themselves. If it's not touching their family now, it might be in 10 years, whether that's a nephew or a child, or a grandchild or a cousin, but it's going to touch everybody at some point with the way that trends are moving at such a rapid pace. And all other diagnosis rates are going up as well. So anxiety, depression, OCD, just neurodivergent diagnoses. So I think that people should educate themselves, or at least, understand, why do I feel this way? What can I do? And doing doesn't mean you have to give a lot of money or give a lot of energy. It really can be something as simple as texting a friend and saying, hey, I miss seeing you. Do you need anything? Can we have a cup of coffee? I can't spend 8 hours with you a week, but once a month I might be able to hang out and just catch up with you, just let you know you're still loved. And I think that would be really helpful for parents.
Well, and that's the power of, like, my personal passion is this idea of creating an autism-ready world, right? It's not just putting it back. Yes, we have wonderful treatments, and there's a lot that we can do to support families with autism. And we also have to look at ourselves, right? If we have typically developing kids, or if we're not more specifically individually affected. So I like that call to action. I think Dr. Phil called it like a specific call to action is, hey, just reach out to someone, right? And don't put the burden on them. Say, is there anything I can do to help you?
Exactly.
Or how can I be here to support? I love that, Emily. Well, you started PeerKnect, for many of these same reasons. And I really love what you set out to do. I want to read here that, as you described PeerKnect, we build friendships and social connections for children with all abilities by bridging the gap between parents, caretakers, and therapists. I think that's beautifully said. So what problem did you see that felt like it needed a solution, and how is PeerKnect solving for that, Emily?
Well, I came into the field of ABA later in life, maybe not like a lot of BCBAs who go to college, graduate school in their mid-20s, and then they're seeing clients. I was already a mom. I had gone through a divorce. I went to graduate school. And so my kids were in elementary school and middle school when I started working in this field. And because I'm a mom, I love kids. I loved, playing with my kids. And I was always the mom that was like, let's have everybody over here. I had a minivan. How many kids can I fit in my minivan, right? So when I would start working with clients, I brought that same energy. And it's like, we're going to have fun. It's not just about DTT, right? Not just discrete trial training, man training, tech training. That's boring. It's necessary, of course. But you can do a lot of that in natural, organic teaching styles. If you are engaged in play, if you are engaged in socializing. And so parents that I worked with, they would ask me, hey, can you get my child connected for play dates? Do you know anybody that could socialize with my child? Do you know anybody that I could get connected to? And I would try to connect with other colleagues, but it was impossible. I really had a hard time. I would text different people and we just couldn't get things coordinated, so I kind of gave up. But because that was just a common recurring question that I received, and then also just seeing my clients, like, we're having so much fun, and I know they don't ever get to have fun with friends. They don't ever get to engage with other peers. And so I thought something should exist to help these parents get connected. And nothing existed because I checked, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to do something about this. And so my business partner, Aram, he just finished his PhD in software engineering, but at the time he had just started. This was back in 2018, and I said, I have an idea for an application, and I would love it if you would help me, let me know what your thoughts are. So we got together. He said, this is amazing. This is such a great idea. And it started with just connecting a parent with a parent for an in-person play date. And then it evolved to, I was like, but therapists need this too. We could use this as a tool. And so it was then connecting a parent with a parent or therapist with a therapist, whatever connection is made. And then there's other caretakers. I've worked with guardians. I've worked with grandparents. So we wanted to make it available to anybody who is in the child's life. And then it was like birthday parties and other types of parties where kids can get connected. And then none of my clients knew about business hosted events like sensory friendly events. And so I was like, how is it that they don't know that these things exist? I always wanted to promote that community engagement. And so as it evolved, we added all of these different features and functions. And so that was the inspiration, just being a mom and knowing how important it is to get kids connected for friendship building or just a social activity. And look at what COVID has taught us in the last 2 years, right? Yeah. We are socially distanced, and the word social has a different meaning now for kids. There's a new association with it that they should be distanced, not connected. So we have to really promote that connection again. So originally, I developed it with the lens of a BCBA and a mom for kiddos with special needs and autism. But then I was like, children of all abilities, we want to welcome them. We want to be inclusive for everybody. And so that's why we say children of all abilities, because I know a lot of families in the special needs community or the autism community, they feel left out. So I built this for them, and then we're including the typically developing kids.
Right on. And tell me a little bit more about the models. I think, as I understand, you work directly with providers who then can provide it to their families and therapists and others. Are you also selling it, or can parents access it directly? Tell me more about that.
So there's 3 different models. A business, like a disability organization, or a movie theater, or like a pizza place or something that has an inclusive event. They can subscribe, and then they post their events, as many as they want to each month, to just let people know in the community within 40 miles of the business's radius that they are hosting an event, whether it's a low sensory day, a sensory friendly event, or they're just always inclusive. And then parents, they have the option of downloading the application for free, and then they can access all of those events. So the free subscription or the free account allows them to see all of those businesses within their radius, so their geolocation, within 40 miles of their geolocation. But then if they want to post play dates or birthday parties or anything else, virtual play dates, then they upgrade their account to a premier version account, and they subscribe, and then they pay $14.99 each month. And with that subscription, we also have ID verification, because I wanted to protect our families. I'm a mom and I'm a therapist. When I was in the community with my clients, I was, like, okay, we have to be protective. So I was just thinking through that same, that same mindset when I was developing PeerKnect. I wouldn't want to connect with somebody that I don't know unless I know they've been verified. So there's an added safety feature there. We also have Google Assist, which is an added safety feature, and it suggests places near the geolocation of the user for like a good place for a play date, like a library, an indoor gym, a park, so families don't have to kind of figure that piece out for themselves. And then the therapy model, it's basically a combination of those two. So it allows the therapy practice. If they have caretaker trainings, if they have inclusive events, if they have social skills groups, whatever it is that they want to post, they can post those. That's that $34.99 admin fee that the businesses pay. And then they can add designated users. And the designated users are the therapists that work for the therapy practice. Then they can have access. Each therapist would download the app, and they can post those play dates, in person or virtual.
Right on. Well, I love how you mentioned, and it's so true, that COVID has put us in a new environment where even if before, maybe a parent could go down to a park or go to some local community gathering and potentially engage with others, that those opportunities are fewer and farther between. And so especially with a smaller circle of a community of those with special needs and of all abilities, being able to find someone likely in your neighborhood, right, or in your community that you had no idea was right down the street is really powerful. Well, you're the female founder, Emily, of a tech company. And I think I recently read the rate of investment in female startups who got venture capital went down in 2021. And now this is something I'm personally passionate about. I've got a 6 and an 8-year-old daughter. And I want a world for them where they have every opportunity they could have. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience as a female entrepreneur, as both a services entrepreneur, but also as a tech entrepreneur. What's been your experience?
Well, so I have bootstrapped this company from day one. When we first started developing our technology, we tried to get connected with some private equity groups, and maybe even some venture capitalist groups. And people weren't interested, and so we just kept plugging along. Even as we fully developed our technology, we did our beta launch, and then months later we updated our technology after we received feedback from our beta, and then updated technology and did our soft launch. Of course, we got our app approved in both the Apple Store and the Google Store. We have gained users on our own, but it's really difficult because I've met with a lot of these private equity firms and venture capitalists, and I think it's hard to say why. I can only assume why people say no to female founders, but it has to be associated or related to an implicit bias. So a lot of times people don't know a bias that they have. The majority of the private equity funders or VC funders, they are white males. And a lot of companies that are, they don't even have technology and they're receiving investments. Like where Aram and I were, we had to develop everything. We tried to get investors before we had everything developed, but I've had to invest everything myself. And so the only thing that I can say that it would be, because it's not just me, there's plenty of women out there who have gone through the same exact process, and then they've brought their company to success. They are generating revenue and they are changing the world. But if it is about a bias, an implicit bias that a male private equity funder or venture capitalist has, they need to have that awareness so they can objectively decide to change that bias. I was looking before our meeting, and I want to read this to you really quick. So it says, female-founded companies, this is September of 2021, had performed 63% better than all male-founded teams had funded. And this report also found that women-led teams generate a 35% higher return on investment than all male teams. So tell me, what is it? With statistics like that, what is it? Why are women not? And let me tell you, I was, a lot of men that are entrepreneurs, I don't know how many of them are, raising families and getting PhDs, and they have teenagers and they're doing all of these things, developing an application and getting it to a place where the technology is amazing and wonderful and approved by both app stores, right? And that's what I did. And we're still looking for investors. We started a WeFunder campaign, which we just launched live last week. So I don't know. That's a great question, but I know the statistics say that women are more successful, and maybe that's because we have to work harder to get to where we are. And so we have more motivation, which if you want to look at it through the behavior analytic lens, that might explain why we keep going, but we're motivated, right? But it's tiring, you know. I would love to see equity there. I would love to see equity with not just women, but all races. Like everybody's being funded, not just a certain group. And you can see that group that is being funded, they're not even as successful as the female group. So why is there that disproportionate investment in female founders?
Yeah, this equality of opportunity is so critical. You know, Emily, what makes it particularly egregious to me is that if you look at venture capital funding over the last few years, it has exploded. I mean, there's more investment going to it. It's open to more people than ever before. And yet, female founders, as you described, are not getting as much of that. So I'd love to put a link to that in the show notes so our listeners can see it. ABA practice owners, are billing and insurance issues getting you down? Well, let me tell you, Element RCM is your answer. Element provides world-class revenue cycle management services, contracting, credentialing, authorizations, billing, and more. Element's your partner, so you can focus on what you love to do, providing the highest quality services to your families and clients. Element's a preferred partner of the Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, and its founders have nearly 20 years of experience owning and operating successful ABA organizations. They understand you. They know that every dollar counts, that integrity is everything. Element works with any practice management system. And Element's not a vendor, they're your partner. So find out more and take a free revenue cycle assessment at elementrcm.ai. I'm curious, like, if you could share any of the specific reasons that VCs or private equity or other investors gave you for not wanting to invest.
Oh, the biggest one is proof of concept. That's my least favorite word ever. And I'll tell you why. Because what we're trying to do is build market by market. We're not even, we cast a wide net at first across the United States just to make connections. But we're here in Nashville, so really we're building our network here in Nashville first. And so we have businesses that have signed up for PeerKnect. We have had ABA therapy practices. There's one in New York City. They signed up. We said, we're not marketing in your territory yet. We're not promoting. We're not doing anything. They're like, we don't care. We think this is amazing. So they signed up, right? So we have some businesses in Los Angeles, Arizona, North Carolina, but all of them know, like everything is going to promote and build in Nashville. So we know what the magic sauce is to take that to all the different markets, the strategy to all the different markets. And so I just think, what proof of concept do you need? We have parents who have downloaded the app, almost 400, and we have several businesses that have signed up, including ABA therapy practices. And so look at how far I have come without their investment, without their help, without their strategic partnerships. Just imagine what I could do if I actually had that investment and that strategic partnership. We could PeerKnect could explode across the country. And so that's what I always wonder, like, what do you want, If you look at some of the other bigger networking companies, I don't know if I can name them here, but other network companies that connect people for dates or for ride sharing or whatever, like, it took a lot of them, some of them 7 to 10 years to even generate revenue and to build their networks. And so, we are less than 6 months from our soft launch, and we are gaining users and we are building our network. And so that's always the frustrating piece of it is, well, what more do you want from us? I mean, look what we've done without you. And if you would just join us, we could do so much more. So that's where it makes me think, like, is it an implicit bias? Is this person, they just can't get past that I'm a female founder, but if I were a male, would they invest? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
Good question.
Because like I said, there are plenty of companies out there who didn't have their technology developed. We have our architecture, we have our database, we have, we can take our architecture and our database and translate it and go into any country now in the world if we wanted to, if we had the money. PeerKnect is for parents of children 17 and younger. We had a conversation with an organization a week ago, and they were interested in using it for the adult population. And all it would take is just changing some of the features. So the functionality would be the same, getting people connected, getting groups connected, whatever it is, but just changing it so it wouldn't be a play date. 22-year-olds don't want to go on a play date, but they want to go on a date or a social connection, right? And then creating a new database. So it's just a copy of what we have, put it over here, and then market it to that network. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is, but it's been an interesting journey. I can say that.
I certainly, unfortunately, don't know what the answer is either. But as you describe this, there's actually a book I recently read called The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen. And he talks about, he was actually at Uber for a number of years, but he has done a ton of research around what does it take to start online communities and marketplaces. If you think about it, this is really hard, right? The value of a marketplace or community grows almost exponentially as that community grows, but it's really hard to this idea of cold start. How do you get it started, right? What's the hard versus easy side of your network? But one of the concepts that he talks about that I think I heard you very clearly reference was this idea of the importance of atomic networks. That is sort of this unit of people in a closely aligned geography with the right sort of passionate people engaging. And any social network has this 1, 10, 100 concept of one super user to 10 people who engage to 100 people who are sort of lurkers, right? They're on it, they're engaged to it. But it sounds like what you were building in Nashville is that idea of an atomic network of let's get this. I hate to use that term that you described, but like that, this is clearly the proof of concept. It is working here, and that's going to give you a replicable way to roll out to other communities.
Exactly. And that's it. That's the magic sauce for like what strategy is going to work, gain us all these users. They're actually engaging with the app. They're posting play dates, and they're also looking to see what sensory friendly events are available. And then everywhere else, we just apply it. But the wonderful thing is we have connected across the country with so many organizations and businesses that 100% of them are like, this is amazing. We love this. We love PeerKnect. We love what you're doing. Can we promote it to our families? And so we have established this really great list of like community partners already from California to New York and everywhere in between. So when we are ready to do that market to market networking and building, we have our partners in place already, and they're going to help us grow.
Right on. Well, in addition to everything else, Emily, that you're doing as a founder, an entrepreneur, and a behavior analyst, and a technologist on top of all that, you're almost finished with your PhD, which is just kind of like extraordinary. And as I understand, one of your areas of study is delay discounting. Tell me more about that.
Well, so I think I took a class and I had to write a paper on delay discounting, but it wasn't a main focus of study for me. But I thought it was extremely interesting. So delay discounting just tells you maybe how impulsive an individual might be. And so there are assessments that you would use. And basically what that means is, would you rather take $20 on Saturday or $40 at the end of the year, right? And so your choice, the choices that you make in this assessment help me understand how impulsive you might be. So if you're taking, no, I don't want to wait. I don't want the reward later. And it's based on our subjective thinking. So basically our conditioning. What would make you more impulsive? What decision making have you had to engage in the past, which is part of your conditioning, which would allow you or make you to be more impulsive when you do make decisions. And the interesting thing with this is that with this little paper that I wrote for one of my courses, I got to take this assessment and assess my children. And I really thought my son, so I have two teenagers, I thought my son would be more impulsive. And my daughter was way more impulsive because I'd be like, do you want $100 in a year or would you want, $12 today? And she'd be like, I'll take the $12 today. So my son was always like, oh, I'll wait. I was like, who are you guys? I don't even know you, but it's really interesting. And then what that does is it allows you to kind of predict somebody's behavior and the decision-making process. So it might seem like, well, why do you care? But it really does matter because then you can understand how to treat somebody. And I think they use delayed discounting a lot when they're treating individuals who might be addicts. Like pre and post test, how are we going to guide our treatment plan or how does this guide our treatment plan? So it's really interesting. But yeah, delayed discounting is kind of fascinating.
That is fascinating. I'm curious, are there like specific questions or things that if a listener's like, oh, am I an impulsive person or not? Or like, what are a couple examples of questions that might indicate one way or another? It sounds like one of those is just that, would you take more, less now or more later? But anything else?
Exactly. And it's not just one question, right? There's a series of questions because they're weighted. There's a K value. I can't remember all of it, but there's a K value and that tells you, because some of them are like, would you take $12 in 3 days or $15 in 14 days, right? So that helps to understand how impulsive you are too. Like, if you're always like, oh, I can just wait for the bigger reward, because you really are making decisions. It's not always about immediate or long term. Some of them are really close together. So it really does help to understand subjectively how you think about rewards and how willing you are to access them, or how much you need to access them. So it's very interesting. But yeah, I would say you can definitely do a Google search, and I guarantee there's an assessment you can take online just to see what your K score is or K value is and see how impulsive you might be.
Wow, fascinating. I've always considered myself an extraordinarily impulsive person, so I'm going to have to go and take this. And, the question comes to my mind, like, how much of this is sort of biology versus, behavioral, right? And can it be shaped? And I know, even though I'm not a BCBA, I know any behavior can be shaped, right? Clearly. But that's interesting, is I don't know if you came across any of that, any discussions around how much of this is just inherent biology, this impulsivity.
Yeah, there is a genetic component to it. So that's something else that the listeners can look up. There is a genetic component, but they believe. And then also, of course, it has to do with your conditioning. There's 3 levels of selection: the phylogeny, which is your genetic species makeup, right? And then the ontogeny, which is your personal conditioning for your lifetime as this individual. And then there's the cultural level, which is your family, the people you hang out with, your race, where you grew up, even what part of the country you grew up in. So those all affect your conditioning, the way you believe, and your attitudes, and all of those things. And so absolutely, there's always a genetic component, but you wonder which one is more powerful, genes or conditioning.
Well, I think one of the most important things at thinking about our listeners who are, building extraordinary ABA practices and involved in the field and our leaders, and just a variety of stakeholders. Like, one of the most important things you can do as a leader is have self-awareness and this mindset of continuous improvement and always wanting to learn. So, kind listeners, I'd encourage you. This is another great opportunity. Check out delayed discounting and drop in the show notes. Are you more or less on that impulsive scale? Well, let me pivot. And Emily, what's one thing that every ABA business owner should start doing? What's one thing they should stop doing?
Well, just speaking from my experience in ABA, I think that we should kind of practice what we know from our science. We don't want to be aversive. We want to be reinforcing. Somebody told me that when I was training. They were like, you're the reinforcer, Emily, when you go work with clients. Always remember that. You can bring all kinds of stuff that they might want access to, but if you're aversive, you're going to have issues throughout your entire session. I was like, oh, that's amazing. But I'm that way anyway. I was always like, let's have fun. We're going to play. We're going to, I'll watch whatever video you're watching on your iPad. I'm going to watch it with you. I'm going to enjoy it if that's what you want, right? So I think that people have to recognize, you said it perfectly, you have to have awareness and you have to be mindful. Way too many people are so unaware of what they're projecting, and are they aversive? Are they reactive? Are they supportive? Are they nurturing? And if they are not those things, they need to be mindful and trying to consciously be those things. And ABA therapy practices see high turnover rates, right? That's been my experience. Those are conversations that I've had with people. And so why not ask? Why not do a survey? Was this an aversive place for you to work? What can we do to improve? Like, use organizational behavior management techniques. That's part of behavior analysis, to understand how you can make your clinical practice so reinforcing that they never want to leave. And we do get burnout if we're working with the same clients over and over again, especially if they engage in high interfering rates of behavior. If we're always in the same environment, that's why I thought PeerKnect would be wonderful for therapists, because go out on a play date. I loved it when I got to go in the community with my clients. So instead of doing DTT every day and you're looking at the same 4 blank walls and you have this bucket of reinforcers and goals, go do something else. And you're having fun, your client's having fun. You go grab a bite to eat together, go on a play date and just make life enjoyable, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve the quality of life of our families that we work with, right? And we want our clients to thrive. But if we are burned out and we're bringing that energy into that session, they're going to feel it, they're going to know it, and we have to fix that. And why are they burned out? And why do they have such funky energy? What's going on? Why is the turnover rate so high? So I would say, find out, do a survey, have people be honest with you. I think a lot of people aren't able to take that honest feedback. But for me, I'm always like, if I'm meeting, like we talked about investors, if I'm meeting with an investor, I'll ask them. I will straight up say, so why don't you want to invest? Because I'm at that place now. Tell me what I can do to improve on my pitch, on my company, whatever it is. Because if I don't know how to improve, then I can't make any changes, right? Can't think beyond what you know. Here's your little bubble of knowledge. But we always, like you said, we should always be expanding that. We should always be learning to improve ourselves. And that applies to ABA therapy practice owners, clinical directors, leaders, supervisors. You cannot create an aversive environment. You can't do it and maintain. It's just not going to work. And I think there's some therapy practices out there that I've met with, and they're doing an amazing job at that. And so I would encourage companies to, if you have a high turnover rate, see what's going on, because it affects everybody, not just the BCBAs and the RBTs. It affects the families that we're working with. And we didn't get into this field to be burned out or make anybody's life worse. We want to help people, so we should help each other. And that's, having that supportive, nurturing environment in the therapy practice, not just with our families, but as a whole.
Powerfully said. Like, as a therapist, as a BCBA, you are the reinforcer. I love that, right? Yeah, it's not that it's doing MSWOs and other things. No, it's like, that's you. And in the same vein, as a leader, you are the reinforcer, right? Especially early on in an organization. And so it's up to you as a leader, certainly, to be that reinforcer and to build that culture of reinforcement that hopefully will address turnover issues that our field faces. Well said. Emily, throw one question at me, anything, and make me answer on the spot.
Make you answer. Did you go skiing this morning?
You know what? I am dressed up like I am, but that's only because it's cold. I did not go skiing, no. But I spoiler, I did on Friday take my son out of school. He's 11, and we played hooky for the day, and we went up and had just an amazing day together in the mountains.
Good for you. That's awesome.
One-on-one time with kids. I have my wife and I have 3 kids, and it's awesome spending time as a family. And we found it's just really important, that one-on-one time where we build deeper relationships with one another. So I'm still flying high.
I love it. That's how it's supposed to be when we have kids, right? We're supposed to nurture and love them and support them. And it's okay to play hooky every once in a while when you're doing something like that, That's
right.
It's not going to affect his schoolwork for
That's
one
right.
day.
That's right. Sometimes as I tell my kids, sometimes education has to get in the way of school, like education in the mountains. So, um, Emily, where can
Connecting
people,
with nature is so important too. I love it.
so important, and tons of research around how powerful that is for recovery, for, I mean, all kinds of stuff. So true. Emily, where can people find you online, you and PeerKnect online and on social media?
So it's just everything is PeerKnect, and we spell it. We wanted to have a techie type of name, so it's PeerKnect. So it's peerknect.com. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere, and so they can find us there, and they can connect. If somebody wants to connect with me directly, you can find me on LinkedIn, Emily Bruce, BCBA, PeerKnect, or just Emily@peerknect.com. You can email me directly.
Awesome. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes. So, are you ready for our hot take questions, rapid fire, quick, short answers?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, Emily, you're on your deathbed. What's the one thing you want to be remembered for?
Being a good mom, not just to my kids, but every kiddo that I've ever worked with, that they feel in my presence, that protective, loving mom energy was there to support them.
What's your most important self-care practice?
Meditation. Meditate every single day. And sometimes in the middle of the day, I'm like, I just have to go connect with a higher power than myself and disconnect from everything that's going on around me.
Right on. We share that. 20 minutes every morning is like my recipe to a happy day. In fact, my family and I all did a little headspace like family meditation this morning, which was kind of fun.
I love it. Yeah. Taught my children the same thing. It changes everything. It really does.
So if you could cancel all meetings and skip all your responsibilities for a day, how would you spend the day?
You would find me, hopefully it's a warm day. If it's a cold day, you'll find me inside. But if it's a warm day, out in nature somewhere, near water, soaking up the sun, have a picnic, meditating out in nature, and just not doing anything but enjoying like the earth, the sun, the wind, the water.
Nice. What's your favorite song ever?
That's a loaded question because my favorite songs change as my mood changes. So if I'm in like a hyped up mood, I need something just to listen to in the car and drive, not fast, but just you feel it, right? But my go-tos, if I'm just feeling kind of like level and good, the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, and Van Halen, those are my three favorites. And when I say Van Halen, it's with Sammy Hagar. I do like Dave, but Sammy's my favorite. So any song from any one of those three bands will do at any time.
Love it. Yes, and R.I.P. Eddie Van Halen, who passed away just a little over a year ago. One of the all-time great guitarists and one of my original inspirations for playing my guitar. Well, Emily, if you could give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would tell myself about cause and effect. You reap what you sow, such powerful words. When I found the field of ABA, I was kind of going through my spiritual transformation, understanding cause and effect, and then ABA was like deterministic. I was like, this is amazing. This is an amazing science. Science and religion totally match up right here. Everything is analytical. You can see that cause and effect relationship with most things, and you can see the trajectory of somebody's life based on the decisions or their behavior that they're engaging in. And that's what I would want to know, because I had a lot of adverse things happen to me in my youth, which kind of guided me in my early 20s on decisions that I did or didn't make. And, I raised myself basically. And so once I really understood this concept, everything in my life changed, and I was able to be like very consciously making decisions, consciously deciding how I feel today, consciously deciding how I treat people today, consciously deciding everything that I do, instead of it just being impulsive like we talked about, or compulsive. That's what I would tell myself. I would say, you reap what you sow. If you plant a tomato seed, you're going to get a tomato plant. And that goes with everything in your life that you're doing. So that's what I would tell myself.
You can only wear one style of footwear for the rest of your life. Which would it be?
Running shoes. I'm sure that's what I wear anyway, unless I have to go out. Yeah, running shoes for sure.
So comfortable and can't go wrong. Emily, it has been a phenomenal pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you. This has been awesome. I could stay on for another hour. It's wonderful.
You and me both. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Building Better Businesses in ABA podcast. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. We value your feedback. Don't forget to follow us on social media at elementrcm.ai.